Hello everyone, today we make our usual channel update at the 100th video. We arrived to 700 this time for, I can tell you here, 1656 subscribers, right? So, right, nothing has dramatically changed from last time, but objectively the channel has been growing more recently. You may say that yeah, for 700 videos that in 2 years, this is not such a great achievement. But objectively, there are many reasons for which my videos are not watched that I'm aware of, and that are part of a broader, long-term strategy, if you want, right? Naturally, there is from my side the incapability, the impossibility, or simply the lack of interest in dedicating myself in, I don't know, in graphics, for example, or other stuff like this. Many of you complain about the audio quality, or better, the volume, right, which is seemingly low. I've hired a little bit. Sometimes, one commentators comes and says, yeah, finally you got it right, and then another says, no, it's too low. Well, this also maybe depends largely from where you listen to it. I generally listen with almost everything on my computer with headphones, right? And I don't know whether we can actually take a look here about the device that you use. And I've seen here from statistics, it's usually computer as well. So yeah, I realize, compared to other videos and maybe if you have other stuff going on, maybe music, so on, it's maybe low in comparison, but I don't think it's such a bad quality. I usually listen to it sometimes, and it seems to be rather fine, right? It may be low in general, but not low at the point it can't be heard, right? The sound is pretty loud and clear if you just listen it at a moderate volume. So I don't really know about this. And another weird thing now that's going on that you've probably already seen is that the new version of YouTube analytics of YouTube Studio, right? It's come, it's been imposed, right? Where all people say, oh, we're better off with the classical version. No, we need to improve the thing. And it turns out that there were even some features here that were lost, right? For example, recently, we will talk about it in a while, about comments. There was a way to filter them using certain keys. I still haven't found a new YouTube Studio D way to fix that. In comment sections, you can't, there is no filter, apparently, that you can customize with words in it, etc. But I must say that at least this new version that I can't see very well is kind of slow. I don't know why, because my Chrome and Firefox are updated to the latest version, but I still use Xpedo, which may be the reason. I frankly have no idea how this stuff works. How it interplays. But anyhow, the essential does work. So, and there are other interesting features. For example, I finally have back the statistics, the so-called geographic statistics, where you come from. That is an interesting thing to start from. In fact, if I manage to click on this freaking stuff, because it does, but it takes some seconds to open. I don't know why. The other version functioned so well, so fluidly. Everything was fine. Now we need to complicate this. And okay, maybe let's not start from that, but let's focus on the fact that the channel is growing more than it's been in the past. 1 year ago, it was 400 subscribers. At this point, I'm 1600. And there's been this brutal acceleration in the last months, and I don't know why it is the case. Sadly enough, I think this has been part of the lockdown as well. Last year had a similar phenomenon that towards April I had this maximal watch length. I don't really know how. I've been thinking of all the stuff possible. It's obvious that I think most of my watchers are in the northern hemisphere, so during winter and even early spring, temperatures, you tend to stay home more, right? After that, there's a drop. And I think it's cyclical and statistically understandable. And this year, instead, this major wave of views, this tide of views that arrived in chiefly between the second half of April, the first half of May, might have been caused to the lockdown, especially from the United States, because as we will see now, most of my watchers, I think, come from there with an astonishing proportion, as we will see in a while. While all the other world nations are kind of pulverized in just a very few points percentage or even less, right? In terms of watch length, which is the one that actually matters at the end of the day. And so I reached 1,000 subscribers, as I told you last time, at the beginning of January, and now I have 650 more, right? So this thing is keeping to grow. I see it daily, and also with this new version of YouTube Studio, I can't even see how literally this unfolds, because the previous one after 1,000 calculated only in the range of tens. So at this point I understand how the flux comes, how you gather around these videos, and there are interesting dynamics that I can't really explain fully, but that I think are meaningful, and that of course do not show this enormous growth, this enormous engagement, this enormous success overall of Schwerpunkt, but they tell me something very, very fascinating about the fact that the few that stumble into Schwerpunkt tend to be attracted with a kind of a higher degree than the usual. And considering that I'm not sponsoring the channel in any way, I'm not making money with it, that when you pass 1,000 subscribers, you can monetize videos and stuff like that. I haven't done anything of this, and I don't really care, really. I don't need the money of this stuff. I don't want you to expose to advertisement and all this stuff. I would like this to be as free as possible. This may become a thing only when I'll have, let's say, enough views that, if I'll ever get to that point, maybe I can cash something from it, a small advertisement you can click, 3 seconds away. I really don't want to, like other YouTubers do, to speak on purpose about the, for the advertisement in the video. It sucks, right? It sucks. There are certain things I really can't stand. I mean, I'm a very appreciative of capitalism, but in a way, I prefer not to spend exactly for that, my time and my dignity in a way. But there's really nothing wrong about it either. It's just, I don't know, it's not me. Maybe one day I will open a Patreon account, and whoever will want to, I will not lock videos for which you'll have to pay, but wherever, someone wants to just leave a thing. But I don't do it. I don't do Schwerpunkt for that, right? I would like to make you understand that I really don't. I've seen how hungry people can get, and how promising the whole YouTube thing is, and it also relatively to the strategy I was telling you before. When I started this more than 2 years ago, and it's roughly around this time 2 years ago that I began to be more consistent about putting out videos. I think at the time it was still like one every 2 or 3 days, right? I intensified the thing just in late summer. I knew that this would take a lot of time, right, for evident reasons that we have listed before, and that, however, all have this plan of creating essentially a net of videos that are interrelated, not just in terms of content, but in fact of philosophy, of interest, of this idea that this pretends, let's say that Schwerpunkt can be kind of an educational channel, right, and not in the usual meaning of the term, right? First of all, as you know, I don't want, nor I wish, that you ever think of me as like someone speaking from, ex cathedra, right? This is just a chat I'm having with you about stuff, that I know when to come up with, maybe some has never heard of, and this is kind of some of my greatest goals, to cover things that popular culture fundamentally ignores, and for reasons that I also pretend to understand in a way, and therefore also presenting the content in a way that hits exactly at that Schwerpunkt, right, and therefore obtaining an effective result, but especially and more to create a historical awareness about things that are not the usual thing, like the stupid clickbait question and thumbnail that is, why was this thing like that, right? The simple, even simplistic approach to history that is as if, I've always had that curiosity, this video is gonna really explain that to me because I fixed it with that. Chances are, if you have such kind of curiosities, it's not because you need a simple answer, but because you need a structural view on the whole issue to really even understand whether the question makes sense in historical terms. Right? This is the point that Schwerpunkt is trying to make here, and it's doing it subtly because every once in a while make this video update and kind of channel updates, that in which I try to explain myself why I do this generally. I know it doesn't count. Because most of the views I get are from people that simply do not realize what this all is about, right? They see like I use a bit of clickbaiting myself in the sense that I know that, for example, when I write about you see, for example, that I talk a lot about different peoples, right? I cover a lot of time and space now, from essentially Hellenism to the early modern age, and it's obvious that I focus sometimes even at a manualistic level on certain peoples, certain countries, certain empires, etc. And therefore, you can be sure about it that every time you put that the name of such entities in the title, people are gonna click for that for whichever reason, mainly nationalistic, though this is not a nationalistic channel, that if I talk about one people or one country, it's because I'm making an advertisement for that people's nationality. No, absolutely not, and that assume that I'm conservative for it. Yes, I'm conservative, but I don't give a shit about nationalism. On the contrary, I think it's pretty dangerous as all isms, and it's also pretty stupid, and it's usually accompanied by a gross and radical historical ignorance, right? That is exactly what nationalism tries to trick you with by putting into the stuff pseudo-historical stuff and saying, look, because I know about it. But no, you don't know shit about it. Let's be honest. But that's not even the point. And of course, I'm glad to talk about past peoples and countries, and I tend to have, let's say, I try to stay always unbiased. For example, I don't know how many of you have guessed from where I am from. You actually try to, and you make the most diverse thing. It's so funny sometimes to look at the comments, and I try to fuel the stuff. But I guess some of you have realized that. But even if it was, you probably noticed that I don't I don't care, like, not even about my country compared to others in this sense. I'm here to talk about history as fully as possible and as objectively as I can, right? And I don't think I can just because I'm a historian or because I study what I do. I think there is simply a kind of, a moral satisfaction, if not a reward for doing so, because the clearer you get about the past, and I think the more intelligent you become as a person, right? Because knowing the past is not, in fact, knowing the fairy tale about the little story of that little country, this and that, but having a massively broad dimension that obviously can't be specific or from an expertise point of view all the time. As you know, I myself am not expert about the majority of things I talk about here. I'm a military historian, and I do care very much about that aspect in history, and yet I understand perfectly from that background that if you stick to just one context, one time, in one space, you are going to be a very bad military historian, because military history cannot be taught, but studying literally all of it, right? That is covering as much as you can from all the most diverse periods and eras, and never trust, in this sense, even the greatest scholarly authorities in the field, because there are many prejudices that lead sometimes people to reach certain levels of education, certain careers, certain paths, and they're not very open minded after all, right? That I criticize very much hyper specialization, and this fact that we have excellent historians that can tell you about the very last comma about one specific thing, about one thing that happened in that specific year in that specific place, but then maybe not getting much of the rest. Well, that's a serious issue, right? It's an issue that it goes beyond history. We have it all over society. We're detaching ourselves ever more from from trying to bridging the gaps that exists between the various subjects, or at least we do it in a kind of a disruptive way. That is to say, okay, these categories have to be cancelled forever, but you have to create something in their place. You have to, propose something. You can just criticize, and then not get into the point. As we have seen also in the series about von Clausewitz, that there is this thing of the good enough, and of something that must be must be oriented to gain practical results, right? You can't just put everything into discussion and pretending that this is gonna work on the long run without building something up accordingly. So Schwerpunkt is trying to do exactly this by talking about a lot of stuff, and very, somewhat different stuff after all, within its own niche. Because also, of course, what I talk about, it's not that all people are interested in warfare, military history in general. They should be, I presume, especially if you follow my von Clausewitz series, and you understand why we talk about that in parallel to military history, but also about history in general history, and it's all part of the same thing. It's right. It's not, in fact, even just breaking, let's say, demolishing the past historiographical conceptions for the sake of it. We're studying a text from the 19th century, and that text was a masterpiece, and it tells things that if just people knew today, they would avoid a lot of problems in their everyday life, right? When people say, but history is a bit useless, humanities, right, are useless, right? Well, if all what you see is kind of politicized universities and people that study, social sciences because they can't even make 2 + 2, and they hate mathematics, they hate law, and therefore they go study, history of, okay, let's not be discriminatory in this regard, of, several disciplines. I have found out in my university that even, history of fashion is really serious. It's a really big deal. It tells you a lot about politics, even war politics. Once I followed exclusively by chance. That's the only... I was waiting for talking with my tutor one day. I didn't know what to do. I stayed half an hour in a room in my department where they were teaching this history of fashion. They were actually making exams about it. And I said, let's hear the thing and laugh about it. On the contrary, it was extremely interesting. He talked about the economy of war, how this during World War II, how this impacted cloth manufacturing, all this stuff. It was very fascinating. So you see, you can really hear from and learn a lot of new stuff all the time. But in general, on the point of humanities, is that humanities are not and should not and cannot be conceived as like a shortcut to avoid scientific subjects, because a historian that doesn't know science is fundamentally worthless as such. The point is realizing what history really is, and the point because why it's difficult to do so, and why history also get easily politicized and in this sense instrumentalized for purposes that have not much to do with the research proper and the refinement of it, and it's because they go out of the curiosity that history has towards literally everything. History is not like a set of notions that condensated in a book to make someone talk about things from which he or she remains detached in a way. You can learn medicine from studying history. You can learn engineering from studying history. I mean, history theoretically, it's more socially oriented for obvious reasons, because you study essentially about politics, war, and society on average. But it's for this very reason encompassing all the human spectrum as such, right? We are studying literally what human beings have done in every single context, in every single situation, right? And that's infinite, of course, but therefore pretending that it's useless by itself and that it doesn't bring an improvement, that it's better to go study something business or something that can theoretically make you cash faster, which is, by the way, pretty sound delusion in many cases, is really not right. Because if you don't get the human factor there, if you don't sniff essentially the humanity and how it works and how it's really set in its mind, it's not that you can't understand even how to make money, right? I presume that if mechanization, artificial intelligence will expand, we will lose many jobs that will have to be replaced, not by another productive system in the material sense of the term, but in education proper, right? That these people must understand what societies are, how they work, and where we should invest in, and why and how. Most people today have literally no idea. And you don't get that if you have just a scientific background that is, however, indispensable for that as well. You must get a humanistic, so-called, I don't like the term humanistic either, right? I think it's, social sciences, something like that, but history by itself answers all the questions in this regard. We can't be just automatons, right? We can't just make people who presumably find out the way to trick others and make money out of that, right? It's not just about competition, it's just about leading. It's about making sound choices on the base of a civic education, of realizing what it means to take a political action rather than not doing it. And if you don't study things like, in fact, politics or war, or how can you even get close to that? Yesterday's video about moral forces in phone closets, if you go listen to it, we addressed that thing pretty powerfully, because it makes you realize that if you don't expand your intellect, there is not much of an accomplishment that an individual can do. I mean, it's over the time of, the second half of the 20th century, where people just, you had a job, a house, a family, it's it, right? Everything just works within itself, within the mechanism. We arrived to the point in which we have a lack of motivation, right? Whichever reason this is caused by, and we're not going to expand on it now because it's not today's topic, but it's a huge deal that can be fixed exclusively through education. And not education in the sense like, let's give everybody education, which would be already a great deal by itself, but giving everybody more than that, way more than that, these competencies and levels. So secondary education must be that we can in fact deliver to people, right? It's ridiculous to pretend that a person born in the 21st century cannot be given, even in parallel to a normal working life, some form of more structure, more sound education than it's ever been given, to the masses in past times, right? And we are realizing that our world is not truly falling apart by itself, but it can turn in very different ways. Because you see, if you don't give this type of education to people, there will be simply someone else who's gonna fill that gap of power. And it's not necessarily even doing it in the best way. not just for people involved, but also in the sense that the same world may not enormously benefit in a direction for that. I have pretty controversial ideas regarding, the concept of crisis and individual freedom and how this can unfold. And I'm personally working since 3 years now on a period of crisis historically that makes you really realize that when people get fundamentally obsessed just about this ideal freedom that is, okay, I want to do everything I want and I don't have to respond to anyone, that's when the crisis arrives. That's why the average, what the middle class, this should be really, the locomotive of the world, will collapses, right? That's where all its potential goes wasted, and lords or tyrants, if you prefer, depending on from which side you see the thing, is takeover, right? And great things can be accomplished as well, right? Even by tyrants. The problem though is that is there a better option, and do we have a choice? Because we are in a time in a world in which we're not tied so much to the Malthusian cycles or certain inescapable material dimensions that always hit pretty hard, right? And at the core of for example, of a pre-industrial society, now we have the assets to invest in this greater form of education. If you're still wondering about even finding out the way of how to educate these people, and you see a great problem with this is that even the educational culture has taken a very bad turn, right? I think most educational culture nowadays is at least the ones that shouts the most, I presume, or that you hear the most around is, let's give up homework. What's homework? Homework is useless. We have proven that with less homework, our students grow more intelligent. Well, yes. Yeah, you know what they grow more intelligent for? Just being slaves to frame in the working system, and nothing else. Right? If your goal is to stratify society for saying, okay, no, we already preset that a part of the population is destined to that field of working, it's fine. There are many countries that work fairly well with this. There are some also the wealthiest and better off countries in the world. But one of the consequences is also that the politics of these countries is going is going pretty bad. It's going to be polarized, extremized, and there is a pretty sound problem in terms of values, in terms of mental illnesses, and in terms of simply people remaining, let's be honest about it, morons for all their lives, children for all their lives, right? Having a job, a family, or a house basically tell nothing by themselves whether you are mentally a child or a mature person. Western world has great problems, right? The rest of the world has much greater problems, but as a Westerner myself, I realize that I'm not going to flatter the reality I live in. And that I see also in other countries that maybe are even better than often mine, apparently, but that under the surface seems to have pretty disturbing dynamics going on, in that I will say it. I've been saying it for some time now in my videos. The average Westerner is radically ignorant. And I'm stressing the word radically over and over again because it's essentially and exactly what it is, right? If you put a person out there that essentially doesn't know the history, not even his or her own country, leaving aside other countries in the world, you have an inept, right? You have someone that can spend, that can produce, but cannot really at a basic way, but cannot improve, cannot innovate, cannot come up with brilliant ideas. And all this self-sponsoring also a lot of activities of institutions say, oh, look at our students, how bright they are, how intelligent they are. Even this ranking of universities, of academies, just on the base of, for example, economical criteria, like how, is the business faring within the university, instead of saying, whether you breed morons or, intellectually mature people, is pretty disturbing. What should be, the top education institutions of the Western world are producing people that I can't tell because I've met them. They're not a great deal. They're objectively not a great deal from an intellectual point of view, from an educational point of view. as a medievalist myself in Europe, I go see basically almost, all the countries in Europe produce, PhD in the Middle Ages. These PhDs cannot translate Latin. I say just this. I mean, if you cannot translate Latin in medieval history, and you are a PhD, so theoretically you should be the most educated person in absolute terms in these fields, there is something seriously wrong in this. And it's not just about Latin, it's about all the rest. It's about, once again, growing to that point by way buying the PhD, because also the PhD system, as much as call for papers, is becoming ridiculous, right? This whole great, but this is something that's been spotted even in fields like physics and science, the talk about a great problem of stagnation, of lack of innovation, of all this, kind of as infinity of articles that nobody will ever read, because there is even too much of it. And this flourishing of this alleged, let's race, let's compete, let's increase the productivity, and not let's leave people producing things on their own, with their own intuition, with their own curiosity, with their own, just their own interest and vision. No, just let's produce. Let's see that we put out more and more and more just for the sake of it. It becomes just a merely material thing. There's no idea. There's no value. There's no sap for a real improvement. And it's disgusting. It's disastrous. I never made a video actually about these issues, but there would be so many things to say and tell that also overturn even the cliches, the stereotypes that exist within our own countries. I mean, which are the countries that actually produce the most, that have the better results, will even get to some form of order. And what's the problem is that in the moment of crisis, there will be no mercy, because first of all, we all lose in a way if we are not solidly built. But also, the systems that are apparently more kind of just expansive in a moment of contraction do not have legs to stand on. And that's the enormous problem, right? Stripes, inequality, problems of many kinds. It's not just economical, right? Even economy is a very complex thing. It can't be reduced to a few indicators. It can't be. It's the world of ideas we have lost track of, in my opinion. It's the world of moral forces, of determination, of courage, of honesty. That is really, what we don't talk of anymore. Right, we have been hypnotized in the last 20 years by all this stuff, social networks. I don't know. For example, I always found a relatively bad every criticism to, not every criticism, but in general to annoying. Also because I grew with this thing being repeated over and over again when I was a child in the 90s. This thing of consumerism. Do you remember that? I mean, if you've grown, in the Western world in the 80s, in the 90s, I presume this was an ever going on story. These kids today are too spoiled. They have too much of what they want. They don't know limit. It's all about buying, and having too many stuff. From the from the beginning of the third millennium, this thing disappeared. Like with social networks, you do not hear, not even once, consumerism about it and criticism about it, right? We have cancelled at a level. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily better or wrong. I'm just saying that there is a power in the ways we communicate, in the way we send input and we educate in a way. We I don't know even how to define this, but we picture the world to others, that we have now the capacity of canceling enormous parts of what of concerns that were in part legitimate, of course, and that seem to flatten and kind of crystal. You see, when there is too much in the horizon, you don't even understand where you are exactly. So the fact that we have expanded so much, I'm a great defender of social networks and a great defender of the internet in general, this ability, but it was foreseeable actually that this thing couldn't be easily disciplined, right? That we would at one point have to regulate things that at the end of the day we can't, right? There would be many examples to make in this regard, but it's obvious that one of the consequences is that there is a lack of points of references and of perspective, and the first thing is to flatter the ignorant, to flatter radical ignorance, right? The new philosophy of the last 20 years is that it doesn't matter if you haven't studied in your life, if you don't know anything about the world, if you're just an idiot, if you're frustrated because you realize you're worthless in some ways because it happens too. These are things you never hear, right? They don't come to tell you. But you can be cool, right? You can have a smartphone, you can chat with other people, you can show your pictures to the others, you can be at the center of attention. How cool is that? And this is the way we nurtured this pride in radical ignorance that is one of the greatest threats to our own capacity of to our resilience as a civilization, right? Don't be tricked by this. We are more educated than we have ever been in many ways, right? Living that education, of course, is not just a linear thing that just evolves on a pattern, right? There are tons of different ways of educating someone, and we're not even attempting to understand them in this time. And this is not criticism towards our school systems. So telling the truth, they suck in the way they've turned, but it's not because they're still somewhat traditional. They're bad because of it, right? That's the usual thing. I completely disagree with, and we'll discuss perhaps another time. But the point is, we are more able at this point to parade, I think, the insignificance of ourselves. Right, and I had ethical problems when I started Schwerpunkt because I thought that at the beginning I was quite dubious whether it was a good idea to come here to speak and to say certain things about history, because I say that there's surely going to be someone who will tell this stuff better than I do, and I will surely why should I expose myself, and the point, though, is I got to the conclusion that when I observed a little bit around here on YouTube, how much was put out in terms of certain topics, of certain ideas, of certain. I said, but there's nothing here of. I say, check about how much the example I do all the times. Check how much there is about Merovingian and Frankish history, to make an example, out there on YouTube. Right before I came. Basically, there was nothing. Most of the videos, I made them myself, and I find to be utterly, I don't know, it's incredible to me that a platform like YouTube doesn't have anything, in fair detail, about such a macroscopical part of European history like the Frankish world. Right? How there can be, in fact, so much lack of attention towards so many other countries that contributed to European culture, Western culture, thought, politics. I mean, and how this world goes on happily without giving a damn. So. Even though I'm still fairly unhappy of speaking, right, of needing to come here to speak, right, I also realize that it's worth it in the sense that if I bring on the fore a topic like that most of the people didn't have not even heard of, because once again their educational systems suck, right, because our teachers largely are grossly ignorant all over the Western world, and because we don't even see the point of the potential that not that a kid can have in himself, herself, but the potential that the idea has, that history has by itself, right? You can't pretend just to educate people by coercion, right? In order to teach someone, by definition, etymologically speaking, you have to discipline these people. That is, you have to impose them, at least, to listen to you, right? There is an enormous potential in thinking that can attract by itself spontaneously people, individuals, right? And I don't know how much I accomplished this, how much I am able. I had some people messaging me, tell me something astonishing to me that was like, because of you I started studying at university, or I went out there and I'd go to see certain countries, or to me that was unthinkable, right? Even if it was like just one person, if it were just one person, it would. I know I've done something valuable in here, and for the rest, I talk too much, right? I talk rather too much. I make all these videos like once a day, and it's. I mean, I like it. I don't see anything wrong. I would rather, if I didn't make videos, I would speak with myself or obsess someone else with this stuff. But I think overall, it's something that has attracted some attention, right? Even the criticism I get here is usually mild, right? The type of criticism I get, aside from the audio that, I realize, that's seemingly the most important thing, but that's exactly the example, the point I'm making, that is, it stops largely to that, right? There might be the criticism of the nationalist guy that says, oh no, this country wasn't like that, it was better, my own was better, and all this stuff, and gets cancelled, or at least, I leave it maybe even there if it's not offensive or anything towards anyone, because, then someone else from another country will come to criticize the person, they will start battling in the comments, and meanwhile I will get tons of views because of them. So that's the pretty utilitarian reason why I keep them. But the rest of the criticism may be just from some more educated person who says, I disagree with this, and because of this and that, and say, fine, okay. And that's the kind of criticism I like, and I always maintain those comments. But in general, I get this few attention overall, a few hundreds views in the average video, let's say, in this following days, but the overwhelming majority of the positive contents are comments are kind of enthusiastic of it, right? They get the point I'm trying to make here, right? They say, I had never heard about this stuff, I like it, and I will follow you because I don't care how much the video or the audio sucks. I don't care, right? I want to listen to this stuff because it gives me something that I never thought of, or that I needed to see, maybe just hear said from this perspective, because that maybe help, right? And that's the sap, that's the differential, I don't know even how to say that, the potential for, making a person going away from the computer after having listened to this video and saying, you know what, maybe I will learn more about this stuff because I heard Schwerpunkt talking about it. It really can be interesting, and maybe I will buy a book about this, and I will feel, in this sense, even the history, publishing, and I will improve my knowledge, and maybe I will study this stuff, and maybe I will contribute to the debate, to the dialogue, and I will widen my horizons. If a person tells me I got to university because of you, I even feel responsible negatively. I mean, maybe that person's life will be, hopefully not, right, worse, but, maybe that person will find, he will find his wife there at university, I don't know. It will change his life forever. And to me, I know that there are many ways of changing people's life, even inadvertently, there is no, but the fact that this has been done for the purpose of learning history is amazing, because behind history, I don't see, the dusty books piled up in a library, forgotten from most people's. But I see the life and death and passion and struggle of people throughout all history that we are essentially ourselves, right? That we're same humans we are now, and this can teach us a freaking lot about ourselves, and therefore helping us to do better. So this is, in a nutshell, why I do this thing. And about the growth, I don't know how this thing will unfold, because the growth has been fairly limited, but it's been kind of expanding. As long as I make videos, I presume, but even if I die tomorrow, this thing would keep growing. I realize that, of course, a substantial part of this is also made by me making a video every day, but on the long run, I think exactly at this point, that net that I was envisaging at the beginning is basically forming itself. I start seeing that there are more interactions, like, I managed to tailor all of these videos through tags, and effectively, if you click on one of my videos, you will be readdressed to another one, and the whole thing is slowly taking form, right? And my idea, as I've seen from other YouTubers, is that, they even successful ones did things similar to me, and they said, I made these videos, the thing kept growing, there was nothing special about it, and overnight this thing skyrocketed because the YouTube algorithm was triggered by something that we don't pretty much know what it is. It's really connected to the watch length in a way, in relative terms, on the same video. But there must be something else out there, and this thing skyrocketed, and my point is, like, I don't really care to get like hundreds of thousands of views at a time, also because I'm relatively reserved as a person. That can sound strange about, from someone who makes all this stuff every day, but as you know, I don't talk much about myself, so I can tell you my opinion about certain stuff, but you don't know who I am, you don't know almost anything about what I do, and it seems we are fine with it, because I don't think you're interested in me. I'm not necessarily interested in you. You don't parade yourself in a way that, we get along pretty well, I think. And also, however, the idea is that if that skyrocketing will ever happen for whichever algorithmic dynamic that will happen, my idea is that all this net, this branches of with videos, etc., will automatically be lighten up, and that therefore this thing will be a solid structure at some point that will hopefully expand in a way in which, at this point, I'm making, like, as we always say, fundamentally manualistic level videos. In the future, if this thing grows in some way, it could become more, right? And this is totally speculative, but we are interested in history. Who knows, if we expand this community on Schwerpunkt, we could arrive to even think we want to make a greatest dream since I was a child, was to make a historical movie, right? To produce, to stage one. I don't know how to say that, but a historical movie that is really a historical movie, not it's one of these stuff on Netflix that can be even better than everything we've ever seen up to this point in terms of historical accuracy, but that is still wrong, still philosophically wrong. You see, what I try to stress very much, especially in my von Clausewitz videos, but also in the military historical ones, is that the main point of historical popular culture today is that it doesn't get to the point where it realizes that it's something different from video games, that it's something that history is should be understood before in the thought and then in the action, that battles are not isolated events that you can explain just through what kind of weapons that army used, and or was people that was and what inherent quality they had. That this is nonsense, but people get genuinely interested in this regard. I mean, I think there is a chunk, as we were saying before, it's very political, right? People produce history even in a kind of identitary way, in the sense that it's fine to look at your own history and identity that can be even against identity itself, right? So from both sides of the political aisle, because they assume that history is somewhat a flag of who you are, mm, that's exactly not true, right? History is so, grotesquely complex that, even if you're born in a certain place, if you own certain values, etc., you have to prove you really, you're really a consequence of something that happened in the past. That you're really collecting a legacy, or you're just an exalted ignorant, as we were saying before, that presumes that you that feels pumped up just because it sees the flag of its own country portrayed in a medieval movie battle, right? And we're getting a lot of this problem right now, right? And I would love myself to make videos, I don't know, about the history of my own country, but there are lots of other topics that I find very, very interesting. That I don't know. For example, I made a thesis about a master thesis back in the day that was not about my country, and it was beautiful. When I visited the battlefield, it was probably possibly my great. I mean, I'm not sure whether the greatest spiritual experience I've ever lived, but it went pretty close to it. If it wasn't actually, and to me, that's where the historical value lies. In the ability of understanding humanity in that passage. And it was a bloodbath, right? It was the history of a battle. It was not the history of pure ideals of, things like political correctness or whatever that means, or I don't know, some other. No, I freaking liked the fact that these people, I don't know, went there for a motivation that was rooted in all the reality of the world as we can research today, and that unfolded in this sense, that it's the same place, and that we have forgotten that battle, and that there is much to learn from these individuals, from their decisions, from their determination, from their resilience, from their courage, from their also from their mistakes, right? Even from the negative side, because that helps once again to understand our own humanity, to do a better job with it, right? When the thing becomes identitary is like, I presume that these things happen because it's some of the most elementary thing you can address. For example, why is racism on the rise in many contexts, right? And from both sides, unfortunately. Because racism is literally the cheapest intellectual achievement you can have. Like, you look at someone that looks like similar to you, it doesn't take basically any intellectual commitment in it, right? Even nationalism in itself, it's a more evolved concept than racism, right? Because at least it tries to put together, the history of a country with a complex thing, and there is an effort behind that. A real historical inquiry skyrockets. I mean, it's something that doesn't even see from the sky anymore. This come down here, and therefore we're witnessing this. Even I think in historical look at. Even in Europe, there is inter-European racism. There is a lot of saying of very, you see, one of the consequences of identitarism is necessarily the narrowing of the historical spectrum, right? Because if you presume that there has been a community that has always been the same, that you need to stick to, because otherwise you freak out, because you can't accept that, I don't know, for example, your country evolved from someone else's, the contact with someone else's civilization, that you should be thankful for that, and that should be even legitimately proud about. You obviously spot just the tribalism, the most basic and barbaric and ignorant and backwards aspect of the story, where people usually obsessed with warriors and fighters, and this individual, myth, ethos of individualistic strength and physical prowess. Because if these people knew history, especially military history, they would know that kind of feeling corresponds to the most primitive societies, those that were wiped out by the great civilizations, right? The fact that empires fall have not to do with the alleged superiority of, primitive cultures in this regard. they have to do with much more complex reasons that unavoidably eventually end up by, making these primitive cultures being absorbed by the more advanced ones. And we're flipping the whole thing, because otherwise we can't stress identitarianism. And the reason, once again, when there is so much racism around is, at least this is directly proportional to the levels of historical illiteracy that we have in this very Western world that we were so proud of for being advanced, educated, open-minded, enlightened. No, it's a bunch of beasts that will end up, leaving exploited by. I mean, it's better that they get exploited, as a working class, if they're racist, than another person for real. But they will just keep passing down these ideas to. With all the frustration, with all the hatred, with all the problems that we see happening every day, and that do not help, that just cause problems to others, to themselves, and will achieve nothing in this world. So to me, once again, talking about history and jumping here, look at these videos I made recently. I don't know, we talk about the Maronites, medieval Greece, I don't know, the Bolognese school, this different stuff, right? Dealing with, after all, just with the Middle Ages, but showing this is not about diversity. I personally don't care less about diversity. I don't think this has to do with, once again, identitary politics, which is pretty stupid in the first place as a concept from whichever side of the aisle, for not talking about the concepts of cultural appropriations, of puritanic values, of, people in the past were bad, now we're better, right? Study history, realize that it's pretty idiotic to pretend to make a point by saying, 2,000 years ago, everybody was, slavery was universal. So that sucked. We shouldn't study about it. We were all evil. They were all monsters. 2,000 years ago, humans were biologically identical to today. So the reason of you pretending to cancel that past because you feel to be morally superior just reveals the fact that in 2,000 years, the intellect of the average person has not evolved. On the contrary, don't think you're more intelligent than a person who lived 2,000 years ago, because most likely you are not. I mean, this is an historical acknowledgement. This is not a wishful thinking. Understand history before judging it. This is, you get lost, because in order to understand history, a lifetime or 1,000 lifetimes will never be enough. So you have nothing but to shut up and learn, and, speaking only when you have learned hopefully something that can be, valuable, that can improve, can rise a little bit the level of the debate, right? I don't think personally to be, a great thinker or someone who comes up to stuff. I'm a disclosure largely, and of course I add a bit of my own ideas, especially when they revolve around, for example, the political responsibility, the moral responsibility of the use of violence, things about, because I learned them from von Clausewitz, but I'm talking about these things now exactly because, in 150 years, still, this person has written so much, many people have studied from him so much, but still the masses do not know anything about it. And the masses are not today just, like they could be at the time, masses of unexploited workers that didn't have even the time to educate themselves. The masses today are a bunch of morons that stay glued all the freaking day long to their smartphones. Those are the masses today, and live with, standards of life that, in fact, 150 years ago, they would have spit it in our own faces by saying, you have what you have, and that's how you spend your life. And they would have been right? The problem is lack of motivation, right? It's in part, it's not even our fault, in the sense that it's part of human nature to grow weaker the better you feel, right? If you're not pressured, you grow lazier. Right, and this means that when things crumble, however, you tend to toughen up and to maintain the balance, right? So it's not the cyclical view of history for which, just, there are the pure heroes that emerge like the phoenix from the ashes of civilization. No, it doesn't happen like that. And the world doesn't really work in that fashion either. As we were saying before also about the myth of tribalism and the purity of the good savage. But we... I think there is a way to create that pressure artificially by spreading knowledge. This is what I really mean. This is what I think it really has. You see, because knowledge is, we're all attracted by knowledge, right? We can get tired about learning. We can do it with care, but if it is constant, but it has to be also qualitative, right? This trick also, reading a lot, for example, by itself has very few to do with how intellectually developed you will be, right? That's the reason why, for example, higher education exists. It's not that we do our own studies, because in the university we learn quantitatively more than what the average person out there does. We do it because we are provided with structures that help us to frame the same amount of data, but with a higher critical skill and with a kind of hierarchy and an order that makes sense. So the irony is, you can know exactly the same things about a certain topic, but if you don't have critical skills, you will get nowhere with that compared to what the other person can do, right? That's the difference, once again, between, even age has no value, no importance by itself. You can spend an entire life being, in fact, mentally a child, and your anagrammatic datum tells us nothing in this regard. So there is an effort, like education is costly. If you are tricking kids and making them think that education can be easy and fun, and we don't have to make homeworks because that's bad, I get depressed, you're creating just a weak people. In order to grow educated, you have to spit blood, right? There is no achievement without sufferance, right? And if you don't teach this to people, if you let them think that everything will always go better, we're so happy, there will be the day in which everything will go better. No, there will be a day in which you will die, and very likely in kind of an unpleasant way, and you will have all the remorses about what your miserable life on earth has been, and you will have had, on average, kind of a stressful life. And no, things are not going to go better. Things are going to go better if you actually do something about your problems. If you go out there, you really learn your lesson, you study that, you do your homework, right? Throw in the bin, and every educational system was trying to buy you by saying that homework is useless. They're liars. They're creating slaves. They're not creating individuals. And they will pay this in the next generations. Right, I can assure you, we can bet how much you like. But aside from this, you see how many implications there are in this regard. I don't know how much I can continue the channel, because I would like to do it all the time, and I have currently some problems in potential in my life that I don't know. I may have to change location. I may have some problem in this regard, but I hope to keep doing this, right? And with the coronavirus, they extended for 2 months my PhD, which means that I have with yesterday basically 7 months to finish it now instead than 5, which is very welcomed, and we're paid for that anyway for those 2 months as well, so everything is fine. And this will dilute, even though I will probably have time, even if the worst can happen in every second, to continue the videos every day. And naturally, the more I make them, and the quicker, the more quickly this whole thing will probably take off at some point. But you see, I'm not immortal. I'm not inextinguishable. I'm not, I'm not really making a lot of effort to make these videos at this point, right? Of course, it costs, but I have fun. I like to learn the stuff I eventually tell you about in the videos, and so it's funny to me, and I do it pleasantly. Even if I don't get paid, I don't give a damn about it, frankly. And however, if you think that Schwerpunkt has a shot and it should be a bit larger, should involve more people, in it should be known more widely, etc., and you really want to help without contribution of any kind, etc., in monetary terms, there's one thing that is extremely cheap, that it does cost, right? It has a cost in itself, right? That is, however, very, very simple and very, very effective. If you have, your favorite Schwerpunkt video, share it just once, right? You don't have to do anything else about it. And I know that you may not like to know your family, your friends, to know what you watch. You don't want to share it, you don't care, like it's not a big deal. But if you have any interest to contribute, if you don't, it's fine. I don't care. I'm doing it anyway. I'm glad, even if you watch it, you don't support me. Even if you dislike, as long as it's being watched, it's a big deal. But if you think this thing should, if you really feel like you want to do something for it, just share it one video once from the channel. Only this. And you'll be surprised by how useful this thing can be. Because I got from the analytics essentially one datum that is a very, very clear. That is that these videos do not circulate much. But when they do, they tend to attract, on average, more people than, in fact, YouTube standards, right? So this is interesting because obviously there is a lot of garbage on YouTube, and there is an enormous amount of stuff that's uploaded. So it doesn't surprise me that this stuff is at least more interesting. I know people click more on the impressions. There is a longer watch length, also because the videos are longer, by the way, so that explains it. But I know that most of you really comes from an external research, right? I share all of these videos usually on Facebook groups, and it's even annoying because aside from the fact that I waste time doing it, I feel like I'm kind of imposing myself on the group and exhibiting myself to something I utterly despise. Exhibitionism to me is one of the most disgusting things ever conceivable. By nature, I have a true idiosyncrasy towards it, but I do it because I still think that when this thing is, it's known, it's also appreciated usually more than the average. So if I get so few views, it's generally from people who search for these contents, right? That do not know the channel, but search for certain things about history, and they stumble into Schwerpunkt, and on average, they tend to subscribe more than other contents on YouTube. This means a huge deal, so that's why I ask you to share, because otherwise I wouldn't give a damn, right? Because YouTube more or less will make this thing rise, but there is a matter of time, of course. That is to say, the quickest this thing grows, the greater are the chance that we can do something about things that we like more, right? I will probably be more engaged in it. We could organize something like, I don't know, even a conference, or we could do stuff. We could participate to, I don't know, documentaries. Last year they wrote me, they wanted me to make an interview on a Russian TV channel about the Mamluks, right? It was pretty weird, and the girl who contacted me actually was, I think she found me because I had made a video about the Mamluks, and guess what? On YouTube there is not much about the Mamluks. I had to come here to have on YouTube, that is the largest sharing video platform out there in the world, for saying a bunch of stuff about the Mamluks, because otherwise people do not even care. So that gives you the dimension of how, the potential that there is out there for historical production, right? And I see that other more successful channels are doing a great job at engaging people. There are beautiful channels you probably all know if you clicked on my videos. You were readdressed. Some of them, like some were kings and generals. Others, I don't know. However, that invest a lot, especially in graphics, that also have very good historical content, right? That may present the thing maybe less, in terms of an inquiry, and more in a presentation, right? Which is naturally more immediate, more effective, more entertainmental, right? This is a difference that I would like to stress, is that it can even be negative, definitely a con for Schwerpunkt. That is, I don't want at all Schwerpunkt to be an entertainmental channel, right? Entertainment channel. I really couldn't care less, right? This channel is not to be considered entertainment. I don't know why, but people on average seem to be so spoiled now that everything that someone uploads on YouTube, they presume it should be like, you should do this for my own amusement. No. I upload stuff on YouTube because I'm a free individual who engages in this stuff that, also pretty risky, because, YouTube can cancel all your videos or the channel in one click. And that tells whatever the freak he wants, right? This is what I do. And what I say is not to be considered as an entertainment. It should be considered as a fatigue, as something difficult, right? One thing that I think my watchers should know is that these videos have to be considered in their entirety, right? This is not a list of information that I provide just for the sake of, putting them out, right? These are also critically packed so that you can kind of better orient yourself in the way you should frame this, historically speaking, which is a wholly different deal, right? And within this, there is all the hours that I speak, compared to other videos that are much shorter, and that, in fact, I don't think they get to the point of why this is important, right? If popular culture says that successful videos about history on YouTube are going to be like in video game style and graphics, and they're so flashy and sometimes even longer, but they don't engage in the historical inquiry of the problem, it's normal. Schwerpunkt doesn't belong to that, right? Schwerpunkt is another thing, and it does a different work. There is a different job. There's not better or worse. It's simply different, right? It's aimed. It has different goals. Another thing I always say: you should watch my videos. You know that my videos are for free. I'm doing this all for free. You have all this 700 videos for free. You can listen to them all. I don't care about getting money about this. But there is this thing that I advise you ethically, that if you want to watch my videos, you should watch them with the spirit of a person who is willing to pay for listening to them. Even if you're not paying, and you will not pay for them. Because this is not something that comes, first of all, for free from me, but this is personal, and I do this for my personal reasons. You have nothing to do with it. Don't worry. But this comes with, an objective and a cry for awareness that is meant to shake people. It's meant to engage them ethically. It's not a passive content that you can't just listen to it for, it's a podcast. First of all, right? Many people say, well, it's video, I don't like it, but it's so long. It's a podcast. Podcasts are that long, right? These are largely unscripted, by the way. So that also explains maybe why it takes so long to speak. But you realize, even in a video like today's, that I'm doing this out of the blue, like I didn't prepare anything, because I have all this stuff in my mind in general, floating together, next to lots of others things I have to cope with in everyday life. But that to me, represents something that adjusts my life, right? I have a lot of work. You realize a PhD research is not, an easy walk, right? I've tried, I try to work every day into dilute, so because I'm, otherwise I would freak out. I can't. I'm not a procrastinator, definitely. Simply because I can't sustain that emotionally. I would be terribly anxious, leaving work piling up without diluting it over time. But Schwerpunkt does give me a daily routine. Schwerpunkt tells me, at this hour you have to do this video, and no matter what, as much as you have to work in the rest of the time. And that gives me a discipline. In fact, the few days I didn't make videos, I felt like it was like a wasted time, as a matter of fact. I don't think Schwerpunkt is a waste of time. I think it personally disciplines my life, but it also does something positive in the process. For someone, I don't know about the entity, I don't know about the dimension, but so it is. So, once again, I can't die tomorrow, I can't die in 1 month, in a year, doesn't matter. This thing will end one day, and I don't want it to end now at all, right? I want to continue. But I hope that this thing will not go on, I can say unnoticed, because I have thanks to you. By the way, I didn't thank you even for the subscriptions, but that is implicit all the time. 1,600, almost 1,700 subscribers is a big deal for me, right? Not because of the number itself, right? To me, it's just a number here growing. I don't know who you are. It would impress me to see 1,600 people, in front of me, like face to face, saying, "Oh, wow, these are the people who cared enough about my content to click subscribe, and maybe not even watching, but following in a way." But this is the point. This is the beauty and the greatness of civilization, that I could connect with you and with lots of other people that are not even subscribers and watch me from the outside, and I know it from the stats. So a big shout out to them, and also join YouTube if you can. It's gonna be easier to follow me in a way, or otherwise don't do it, because I did like you in the past, right? So but you listen to this, and this has an impact, and hopefully this has some ramification that for now I can't see, I'm not really aware of, but that one day may bring to something that, if it will improve just a tiny bit historical awareness in somewhere, it will have made this whole thing, right? And for me, and it's already happened, and that's why I continue this, because I hope that statistically, by increasing this thing, more people will better maybe their lives, because they got the motivation for saying, you know what, I want to study the same thing that I heard of Schwerpunkt, and they do, and to me that's a great thing, and that's your achievement, it's not mine, because I maybe helped a little in the process, but I motivated you made the choice, and you are the ones that won in this, right? And don't worry about me. I don't care, once again, about making money from this. I don't care about I don't do it for that, right? I have my own life. I'm doing fine, don't worry. But I'm happy if you are happy from this, and if we all know history together. And also in this, by the way, I make mistakes. I always make mistakes. It happens all the time. There's not a single video I think in which I don't make a mistake, because history is a mistake. There is no thing like the truth in history. We all tell our own story, and some of course is proper. It's better researched, and I feel ashamed sometimes of talking to you about things that, aside from the fact I know there is always someone that knows all of it better than me, but also because I can. I mean, some people say your videos are long. Yeah, they're long, but come on. I mean, if these are the topics I address, usually can take an entire university class of months of lessons to be explained thoroughly. If I speak about about this stuff for 2 hours, to me it's still pretty damn few, and that's why I hope one day I will hopefully increase even the quality, the effectiveness. I still have to decide whether this is actually a disclosuring video. It's more like a criticism or it's an inquiry methodical teaching. I don't know how to even to define, but as I was saying before, I don't see myself as a teacher. I don't think I would ever be a good teacher, even if I were to work with that. I hope really not. At least as a school teacher, because of course I'm more academic oriented at this point. But yeah, I mean, I hope this is gonna get somewhere, right? And that depends largely on you, right? Because if we improve, I mean, if you improve, there is another factor that I consider in here, and I don't do it for charity, in the sense that, you know, if you by yourselves, and maybe just through a little stimulation from Schwerpunkt, you learn history more than you already knew, and you improve your historical knowledge. I think we all benefit from it. Like, I think that the future society, if things go well, will be likely oriented in that direction, right? That in order to be better people, better citizens, we will need history, and that's the investment I'm kind of trying to make here. So that's really the point I'm making. So getting the video is pretty damn long. I didn't expect, even I thought it would be very short today. I wanted to thank here, I mean, once again everybody, but also I wanted to point out here some interesting statistics about the watch length. So here I have a 42.5% from the United States of America. So 42+ % of you come from the United States. This is amazing to me. It's also kind of, I mean, it's really not strange, because this thing is albeit in my, let's say, broken English, but it's still in English, so at least I mean, surely the English-speaking countries are more, you know, prone to listen to me. But it's still a lot, right? Disproportionately so. I didn't expect this, right? I thought I would be watched on average more by Europeans, after all. And maybe it's true if I count all the other statistics, but I can't, because everything here is pulverized. And this is the whole point that is weird, because it's not just that I have 42.5% from the United States listening. I have at the second place the United Kingdom, that is at 4.7%. And if you realize the gap that exists, right? How many people does the UK have? 80 millions, right? The United States, how much? 300 millions. I mean, there is no proportion anyway. And the same goes for other countries. Then I have Canada, 3.4%. Canada number 3, number 4 Germany, that drops to 1.6% though. Then Australia. So it's interesting that Germany basically protrudes into the English-speaking countries by even surpassing one. Then Italy, then Belgium. That is also Italy is at 0%. Belgium is at 0.5%. So here, basically, every other country that comes later, there is Sweden, Czech Republic, Pakistan, India, Turkey, France, the Netherlands, Bulgaria, Poland, Russia, Portugal, Mayotte, Brazil, Greece, Indonesia, Serbia, Spain, South Africa, the United Arab Emirates, Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, South Korea, and so on, are all at basically something like less than 1%. And here, basically, from from Greece downwards, I have 0.0%. So it gets to the 100ths of, you know, total watch length. So all the other countries in the world get pulverized in this sense, and in this low proportion. So I have basically the United States dominating, and these other Western countries essentially with actually Pakistan, India, and Turkey at a good level, even above France or the Netherlands or Poland or Russia, Portugal, etc. So, and yeah, I mean, it's fairly normal, I would say, as a statistic, but it's very fascinating looking at it pictured. And yeah, then I have, let's look at, first of all, the videos, because I'm reading the analytics now. The videos that are, by the way, this thing that I just told you was the statistics about the last month, right? So it's not about the total. If I can, here, I don't think, damn it, this thing is broken, well, whatever. We remain for the last month, because the last month also had an increase of views, etc. So let's skip the video, because I just wanted to know which was the video that was watched in the most absolute terms. And it turns out, however, if I remember from the old analytics that I can't watch now, unfortunately, for a technical problem, it was like, and this breaks my heart in a way, because there are some of the worst videos I made, right? Even with some mistake, but especially because I didn't speak so fluidly like now, right? Today I improved a little bit my English since I started. Those first videos were painful to listen, even more than it is now. And because I stop all the time, and I made way more than I do now, and I also couldn't speak kind of a better English at the time. So, but those videos are kept being watched, and surprisingly keep being liked. They were about the Frankish Merovingian kingdom, if I'm not wrong, then Avars, Bulgars, and Slavs, migration era in Eastern Europe, something like that. And the Battle of Manzikert, and something like that. Now I don't want to descend in the details of what are the reasons also why their videos are more watched, right? So sometimes it's very trivial, even mechanical reasons, right? It's not even a matter of interest stricto sensu, let's say. But passing to here, just I'm skipping through the statistics, I have an interesting age section of the viewers. So that I have a 13.4% of viewers between 18 24 years old. Then the largest chunk in relative terms, that is 46.3% of people between 25 to 34 years old, which is where I fall into myself. And this is easily explainable by a lot of things that also now it's maybe useless to discuss, but I mean, I think part of my generation has soundly developed certain interests, right? It's not just because we use more YouTube, also, right? It's all part of the same thing, but it also had, I think, some interests more in common regarding the same topics of the video as I make and so on. But anyhow, then at 26.8% people between 35 and 44 years old. It's interesting. And 11.6% between people between 45 and 54 years old. A 1.1% of people between 55 and 64, and 0.9% between plus 65 years old. Sex of the watcher, so we have 93.1% men and 6.9% women. I think I don't know why, but I think this is not correct, right? I think that there are many more women actually that watch my videos than this says, and I don't know whether it's because not everybody explicitly states the sex in the in the YouTube account, so I don't know how this thing gets registered, but I'm not sure this is actually complete. And yeah, it also reflects, I mean, I think women are less interested in bloodsheds, in battles, but some are. In our 6.9%, of course, I make also other content, so it's about general history, but I think this may be the reason. I don't know. Am I sexist for saying this? Who knows? But I'm very happy of the female presence on the channel. Actually, I wished it was higher, because I think that I have basically all my greatest teachers in history have been women, right? Aside from military history proper, my tutor, for example, has always been there. I've had, I think that women are much more capable of listening and understanding and really making this very important process in history, that is to reflect, even coldly, even carefully, even not coldly in the sense that there's no passion in it, but without being shattered by impetus that can blur the thing, and to have a sound. And I'm also young, so maybe age has to do with that, but I'm a bit hot-headed, and I would say female character has always been able to make me reflect, stopping by 1 second more and saying, what. And therefore, I just want to say that Schwerpunkt is waiting for more female audience, telling the truth. Then, here I see other stuff. Origin of the subscription actually. And this is interesting, but this is still about this month though. Here, I think, I don't know where this is difficult to read actually, but it seems though that YouTube research is, however, one thing I've noticed is that definitely Schwerpunkt as a channel is becoming a gathering point in itself, right? That there are many more people who gain, that gather around and that start following the channel per se, right? But the second most important group is definitely people who research on YouTube about stuff and encounter my videos and subscribe. This is very important to me because, once again, as we were saying before, that tells clearly that there is a genuine interest from those same people who are interested in a specific historical subject, right? That do not simply come across it randomly, right? That they're at least doing a research and find the. And about this, I think the statistics can stop here because there is not much else to say. Turns out, playlists. This is another thing that matters because I don't know how many of you know that I have a lot of playlists, right? If I often meet people who say, "Oh wow, can you talk please more about this topic?" When they comment under video, and I usually post the link to playlists that at this point are becoming pretty hefty because 700 videos, that happens, and when they find lots of other content, and many people subscribe without knowing that. So please, if you just subscribed, if you are new, aside from welcoming you, I suggest you to give a look at those playlists because they're several actually. They're not mutually exclusive. There are videos that are part of multiple playlists, but they're always fitting. And therefore, if you are searching for a specific topic, specific even country, especially during the Middle Ages, because that's what we mostly talk about, you can find plenty of same stuff right there, and then upload them every day. So every video I make ends up in these playlists. And the first one, but this statistics now, it's not very useful because when I share the videos on Facebook, I share in fact links to the playlists to make people know that this thing exists. So I don't know how many people watch these playlists, and now for just clicking on them on their own, and not because they clicked there from from the link I provided them with. But anyhow, here it seems medieval Europe is the most watched Schwerpunkt mix. Roman warfare, migration era. So yeah, whatever. And I could discuss at length about, which are the most favorite videos. It's obvious that there is a tendency I've noticed that, I don't know why, but I mean it's pleasing, but I also wish that this happened with the other contents. That every time I make a video about Byzantine history, usually I get really a lot of views, and it's kind of strange, because yeah, I know fortunately that in popular culture, Byzantine history is faring pretty well. I mean, among people who like medieval history in general, there is this awareness now that the Byzantine Empire it's a very fascinating topic, and that's also why I began a new series about it and increased the contents dedicated to it. But it's strange when you compare it to other topics that could be easily as interesting and that nobody seems to care very much about. But it's also difficult to generalize. But let's say that there is a lot of ups and downs in general, and I see that I think there are actually not very not very pure reasons for which this. I think there is a bit of nationalism around. Usually the videos that get more views are because people say, oh, look, that's my history, right? And they click. And I think there is a tendency from certain countries to, and I see it because in the comments of certain, and I don't want to make names, but we all know what we're talking about. You can't make a video about one topic that we will say, you will get tons of different, even fake accounts who will say, my country was ancient, so ancient, more than everybody else, we were here before everybody else, everything derived from us, this kind of conspiracy thing / nationalism and hatred against, I don't know, the only dislikes I get usually are the one when we talk about Balkanic history, because there is always someone from the nearbys that has something to say about it, and there is always someone that it gets discontented, right? It's cyclical, because I talk about a bit all history of the area, but we know that there are ferocious kind of antagonisms in certain areas for comprehensible reasons, but sometimes it's annoying because it doesn't happen with any other place, right? At least in a comparable way. Right, because it's obvious that every time we talk about certain polities, we automatically think, okay, but how does this compare with us? How, what can we feel about it? But there are certain areas where it's become an obsession, and for obvious reasons, once again. But, if you can't cut it off, I will not eliminate the comments unless they are hateful or something. But it's just tragicomical, I would say, in a way. But it's also true that I make my own mistakes. I deserve the dislikes, and etc. And another thing about the comments I have to tell you is that before this freaking new YouTube whatever thing changed, basically I began to filter automatically the comments, so that if there are certain particular hateful words, racist words, then insults, certain things that I would eliminate on a regular base, that gets filtered, and I control them. At this point I can manage it, but it can happen sometimes. Even a normal comment can be trapped for reasons that I don't set. For example, this is valid for the filtered comments. You can customize the conditions. Now not anymore, because actually this new YouTube has maintained that filter but not the ability to change it, so it's pretty strange. But sometimes YouTube detects automatically as spam, which is another category, even normal contents, which is weird. So in that case, I don't I don't watch the comments all the time, but it may happen your comment gets suspended for some reason. I don't know. I'm trying to police that because I care about when I started Schwerpunkt, I said I should not ban any comment, because potentially that can even make more views, right? Because it turns out that first of all, dislikes count as likes. So even if you dislike my videos, you're actually doing me a favor in terms of the YouTube statistics and stuff. But it's not a big deal. The deal is that the dislike is okay. Well, it's not a big deal. But if there is kind of hateful content in general, not even towards me or the video, but towards someone else, or let's say there is a sense of malaise for whichever reason, I think people would say, "What? Why are these people? Why?" But if there is an attack towards someone or towards one idea, it's usually spam, right? But in other times, it's just someone complaining about things that are not even pertinent, and or maybe that maybe are even referred to the video, but that seemingly are unrelated to either the content or to what I even said. It's weird, and if this video comments pile up, I think they give a negative impression. So you can argue that the Schwerpunkt is growing darker the more it goes on. Like, we do need a bit of order. We need a bit of policing in this regard, and it's fine, right? Because this is not about censoring dissent. It's really about giving a frame where people can not feel shelter from the outside, because I don't want it at all, but at least can say, okay, this is a place where we can debate healthily, right? And that's the only way I'm limiting expression, let's put it in this way. But it's allowed, so it's not a big deal either, because once again, these videos should be reflected upon, right? It's kind of frustrating when you make a 2 hours video and you realize that you upload the video and the person after 5 minutes says, but I disagree because he heard something wrongly in the first 5 minutes, and I know that it happened in the first 5 minutes because the thing I was referring to was expressed in those 5 minutes, and it's not even correct. And what about the rest of the video? Do you know what I'm talking about? Well, so I realized that there is sometimes a bit this anxiety of expressing and an opinion and different ideas, but sometimes you have to consider that these videos are really conceived as a unicum, and if I say something at the beginning as a premise, it's very likely because I'm going to explain the whole thing thoroughly in the middle. So yeah, I mean, once again, these videos are more like podcasts. Like, take them fundamentally as podcasts. I know it's can even be boring. Like, I don't know how engaging I am. I don't think so, because I'm not a very expressive person. I don't think, once again, that I'm able to engage so much the attention and so on. But it happens to me to listen to podcasts every once in a while as well. It's this voice in the background that tells me something that I can follow or not, and it can be useful, it can help, because after all the things I say, even across several videos, are all intertwined. So it's like embracing kind of a way of thinking rather than just being concentrated about the single video, right? And naturally, if you have a more specific interest, or lots of you write sometimes, oh wow, I was searching for something thorough about this, so thanks for making this, whatever it is, right? The Hungarian knight in the 13th century, right? It's very unlikely to find a video on the internet about it. Well, I make these, so I invest in this sector. I don't know, maybe one day someone will copy this method and I will be overrun. Nobody will watch my videos ever. Hey, this is competition, it's fair. But it's in fact not much about the subject itself, but about the way it's presented, the purpose that stands behind this. That is not to make tons of views, to cash from the views, to clickbait and everything. It's literally to talk about this and to expand a bit on it, and to criticize, to evaluate, to talk about the sources, about the general even about hypothesis and so on. So it's once again a method. There is some historicity in this methodological sense in the content, I would say. So I don't. This is not a cheaply consumable content. It takes quite a time to be chewed and digested because it's heavy, and I realized that. I mean, it's not easy. It's not even pleasant, probably, right? I must be annoying to listen to my voice forever, like for hours, blah blah. I hope you don't do it all the time, but if you do, well, thank you anyway, because at least someone appreciates this regard. I don't know. I would stop it here because the video is disgustingly long, and as you see, it's very easy for me to never shut up. But I can, assure you that in real life I'm actually very silent. I'm a very quiet person, and this is more like reasoning, speaking a loud voice rather than keeping it this within myself, right? So that's basically it. All right. So I want to thank you particularly to all the people who subscribed here. 656 is great. It's a huge deal, I can tell you, and I want to thank all of you, like from the oldest subscriber to the people who follow me regularly that I know and that can always count on my recognition. I know who you are, right? And I appreciate it immensely. Some of you even supported me, even sent me a gift, and these are people I really owe a lot to, and that I count on, and always feel very much for their presence, but for all the others as well. I mean, to me, it's always very positive if once again you get what I hope it is, the positive intent on the channel. That's it, right? And I want to think that if you remain, I see, by the way, a very few people unsubscribe, a very few. So this also means a lot. It means that for whichever reason you care in a way about this content. So thank you for this. Thanks for giving it a chance. And even to those who unsubscribed, who have watched and decided to leave, it's fine. It's understandable. And just thank you for all the views, for all the likes, for all the comments. Like, I really appreciate, and I really reciprocate with the videos themselves. That's what I can do for now. So I will conclude it here, and I really hope that you will, I really wish you all the best in your life, in your endeavors. We all have our own thing, right? Some struggle, definitely more, and good luck, but good luck to everybody in general. And just think that history in this sense can unite us much more than many other things can do, and this is because we don't need to be driven by an instrumentalization of history. We care about the history in itself, right? Not in the narrative driven by. That always happens. There is always a bias of some form, but there is a great difference between something that is evidently political, and unfortunately history is becoming increasingly without much of a concealment at this point. So, and I hope that Schwerpunkt contributes to maintain the thing, kind of devoid this stuff, kind of a neutral ground where everybody can express the same interests, the same curiosities, and can observe things from perspectives that I try to offer that can't obviously be complete, can't always be correct historically, but that definitely do not search for other aims. I talk about very heavy stuff, as you know, but as you realize, I'm not driven by much of a secondary intent at this point. So I hope it will always stay this way, because I would hate it to lose this what I consider to be an ability in a way, and also a reason for which I started making videos. And I try, at least I always try. I don't think I'm never satisfied about how things turn out, but I make the effort, right? And that's I think what matters. And I thank you once again for the comprehension, that in the understanding that you show in this regard as well. So I thank you really a lot, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. And I wish you a great time in the meanwhile. Okay, so bye.